Hi guys, it is Dom here from Soundsphere. Just had a wonderful opportunity to chat to Ryan and Franklin from Algiers about the sonic diversity of their new record, Shook, and we got quite deep in on it. So I'm very, very proud of this one. I think everybody should listen to Algiers. Just one of the most creative forces in music, in alternative music, whatever you want to call it. They don't tend to like genres, but a beautiful band, visual band, cinematic is the word. Anyway, I'll stop going on about it. Please check this out. Please support Algiers. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Cheers. Pleasure to sit with you guys. I appreciate you taking time out from a tour. Obviously, you've got US Euro dates going on right now. I'm particularly interested in how that's going for you guys because this record and obviously all of your material has so many sonic textures. There's so much diversity to the Algiers sound. What are the biggest challenges in taking what you've done, through your history and with Shook as well, out into the live arena and across different countries?
I don't think musically there are any challenges.
No.
This is the fun part. This is why you do all of the other shit so that you have an opportunity to do this. You know?
Yeah.
And this is
Yeah.
where songs develop their soul. And this is where we actually come into our own. And this is where we exist as a band. The energy between what we do, the things that evolve, surprises you from one night to the next as the things develop and grow and you start to dig yourselves evolving as a band.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you have to put in the work too. And obviously, we've put in a lot of work to bring this show to the next stage and to do the record the justice that it deserves. You know, a lot of these songs came from a very intense period of writing that Frankie had in Atlanta and then through Philly. And it was a challenge for the rest of the band to kind of to make sure we were doing everything justice. So we did put in a lot of work, thanks to the label as well, Matador. We put on this really interesting show in December in New York with a whole crew of people and different guests and everything. So we brought that like live energy. So we did a lot of preparation. So it was really about the preparation and then just balancing preparation, the rigors of touring with, the challenges of living while being in a band, because it's not easy.
No. No, that's it. Again, it is that sort of that challenge. And I think you guys, certainly from a listener's perspective, you sort of thrive in that sort of challenging environment, musically. And moving on to the kind of the collaborations that are obviously all over Shook. What are some of the experiences you will take individually? If we start with Ryan and go on to Frankie, in terms of your entire careers, you've obviously done a lot. You've toured the world. You've worked in music for a long time. What are the points in this record that you will remember for the rest of your lives that will be, real passion points for you guys? Obviously, you start with Ryan. Things that you'll remember for the rest of your life from this creative process.
There's actually so many points, and it's weird because some of the other recording processes I don't really have strong attachment or memories for. I mean, there was a few times during Underside because we got to work with Adrian Utley, and Adrian was such a lovely, kind, fun person to interact with, and Ali Chant as well. But this one, I have vivid memories of everything from just initially hearing the demos and just getting very excited because we were kind of all waiting like patiently but ready to hear those demos, and finally when Frank shared them, that was a big moment, and I remember that. And then just nailing the I Can't Stand It chorus because it took a little bit of work. So when Frankie you did like 2 or 3 different type chorus approaches and was getting really frustrated, and we were just trying to encourage him because we believed in the song, and finally it just came together. So that's definitely one. Yeah. And then when Frank was doing his rap on Bite Back, he was like, I don't know, man, like can we do this? And I was like, of course you can do it. So it was a nice rapport between Frankie and I and our engineer, Matt Ricchini, that really, I don't know, it was just a really nice familial environment. And it was so warm and conducive to working. And you probably feel that with all the guests and everything. And then just one last thing, when I first heard Woods on Bite Back, along with Backwash, that just kind of blew my mind because we didn't give them any coaching, did we? They just delivered. We dropped it in. We're like, boom. So those are some of mine. I'm sure Frank's got a bunch more.
Yeah, Frankie.
It was just fun to do it again because it wasn't fun for me.
Yeah. You found yourself really enjoying this process more than previously.
Yeah, absolutely. Particularly because our previous record, we weren't really allowed to do much of what we wanted to do.
Mm.
You know, and for myself, the exception was Can the Subbass Speak, and they were kind of doing the last touches on the record, and I was able to just run around and have free range in the studio and just record all the samples that you hear with nobody telling me what to do. That was really fun. But otherwise, it was very regimented, and I understand why, for the most part, you know, because this was Ben Greenberg and Randall Dunn, respectfully. They did post production and mixing, and for Underside of Power, and that record just was, it took ages to finish, and you know we probably recorded it in 10 different cities and like 14 different studios, and you know over the course of like 6 months, and you know ultimately it came together largely
thanks to them,
thanks to those two
and
things,
Lee,
you know.
and Lee.
Yeah, and Lee. But I think when they did No Year, they were like, all right, we're gonna do the opposite. We're gonna go in the studio for 4 weeks. This is how you guys are gonna do it. And like we let them drive the ship.
Yeah.
And that was an important process, because that, for me, and I think I can say for Ryan as well, really hammered home the fact that we never need to do that again in terms of a band and how we create music, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was important and a learning process, and that we wouldn't have Shook if it weren't for the way No Year turned out.
Tough. It was some tough. Some very difficult lessons to learn, but then it definitely made us closer.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. They can see the enthusiasm. Actually, there's a lot of enthusiasm for this whole process. Just like, you know, listening to you guys and sort of seeing you speak about it. I think there's something to be sort of asked here about. Then, you know, this record again. You mentioned, you know, doing the live stuff is challenging, but it's kind of part of the band, part of the process. So, in what ways do you think Shook has pushed you both in new ways as artists? You know, again, as creative people, do you feel like you've been challenged by the process, or even that you've challenged yourself a little bit? If we start with Frankie and then go to Ryan on this one.
Well, I'm a huge fan of jazz, you know,
Mm.
and the thing that I've learned about jazz is essence, not just a bunch of people wanking on instruments just to show how brilliant they are, but like the essence of jazz is that you have a song and then you have pockets within that song where everybody in the group is allowed to freely express themselves on their terms, and that's their signature. And the traditional setup of jazz that happens in the solo, you know, the horn will start out and then the piano and then the bass will do a thing and the drummer. In essence, that's what we do, but in a much more abstracted sense. And we deal in textures and in tones, and you know, and sonics, and the manipulation of sonics, and these are the ways in which improvisation and expounding on what's already kind of laid there as a foundation with these songs. I don't think we've ever had more of an opportunity to do that than on this tour already. And with the visual component that Lee has added, it's even like more so, because we're I like to put it in terms of Shook as a soundtrack for a movie, which, you know, or a play, you know, whatever you want to call it, but that's our live show. And
Yeah.
the play changes every night, you know, but it's the same soundtrack.
Yeah, yeah. Fluid creativity. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was challenging. I mean, I feel like the gauntlet was thrown down at us on the last record, where I felt sometimes like I like there was a lot of stuff that I needed to learn. I needed to really level up in terms of production, in terms of using analog synthesis, in terms of using modular synthesis, in terms of understanding production. But the biggest challenge for me was to take a step back, and to, you know, with other records, I was throwing songs after songs after songs, and just like, we got to work on my songs. And this time I said, you know what? I'm going to try to sit in a different role. So Frankie and I sat on, and Lee and Matt sat on a production role. So part of production is not like, okay, how are we going to get this drum sound? We're going to just click through every snare that we can find and then manipulate it. It's also about being patient and being encouraging and trying to maintain a mood and make sure that everybody's, you know, checking in and feeling like everybody's kind of okay, and that the pressure's not getting to them, you know? So even just those kind of people skills and the managing skills within a studio space was something that was challenging, but also incredibly rewarding.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. I mean, you can hear it obviously again, just so much again, so much texture and diversity to the record. It's an exciting listen, and you know, you mentioned how rewarding the process was. Obviously, there were a couple of collaborations. You mentioned one on Bite Back, Billy Woods, and Backwash. Obviously, there's also Irreversible Damage, excuse me, with Zach De La Rocha and loads of others. Was the mission statement, and this is my opinion and perception, so do correct me. Was the mission statement with this record for you guys to work with similarly, sort of genre-defying, challenging artists that are really, really pushing the envelope in and they have done obviously, previous generations and obviously Backwash, very much current. Was the mission statement to work with other artists that want to push the envelope, that want to again create that sonic diversity, because that's what it sounds like to me of the record as a whole. It's a boundary pushing, genre pushing collaboration between really interesting, diverse artists. And that's my take on it, but I don't know if that's right or wrong from your perspective as the artist.
I think the mission statement is Algiers as a posse,
Right.
And we don't sit down and try to. So many people get hung up on the genre pushing thing. Like, it's like genre doesn't fucking mean anything. Like, we don't sit down and see, well, how many genres can we combine to make something weird? That's a fucking waste of time, and that's not how real music comes together. Not that I'm saying you proposing this, but I just,
Yeah.
a lot of preoccupation with this in terms of like the press of people and how they're reading it and what we're doing.
Yeah.
So we are constantly trying to make something interesting, and something that challenges ourselves. And whenever any of us bring something into the pot, once it goes through the Algiers machinery, it comes out as something that we never individually, any of us would have anticipated. And that's what we want to do, because that's what makes music interesting and fun for us, And as far as the collaborators are concerned, these are people who have a very similar ethos and approach to how they do music, and in that same way that I was saying when we played together, and sort of jazz modality, each individual has the space to operate and bring to the table what they do naturally, artistically. It extends just the same to all of our collaborators. There was very little, if any, directive for most of the people I get into the fold.
Yeah.
And we were just saying the collaborators particularly because most of them are voices. There's a few people like Mark Cisneros who played sax. Well, he played basically every instrument on the planet, and Patrick Shiroshi. Most of the rest of them were voices, and we weren't even necessarily fully focused on anything other than how the voice sounded, the texture of the voice within the whole sonic element. You know what I mean? And so we just kind of thought about people who would we had a wish list who would fit on a track,
Yeah.
who would be able to rap over this quite wobbly section on Bite Back, who would be able to just match Frank's just brilliant vocals on Irreversible Damage. So it's kind of one of those things where it's like who fits and how do they fit, and not on Cold World. Everything just made sense, and so we tried to do that. And then there was also the spoken element that's really important that I don't think people are fully getting or grasping or understanding. There's a lot of misreading of what that is and why that is. I think the big thing is just about the humanity of it for me. It's like a real humanity. There's a lot of like attempt to just be together. Collaboration is not just about working with other people. It's about being together and expressing feelings of humanity. And to me, it's almost like a support record in terms of everybody's almost, even though you have individual voices, it feels like people are supporting each other within that world that's being created. So I think there's been a lot I think people need to spend a little bit more time with the record to really fully kind of grasp and understand and appreciate that it's a very human and personal album.
Yeah.
Also, collaborations go beyond just the Zach De La Rochas and people that you think I was quarantined at my sister's house, and she's the mezzo soprano that you hear in the choruses in Green Iris, And then, like, at the beginning of that same song, you hear the little girl whispering, That's my friend Deirdre's daughter, Shay, and she's getting into music, and she's really interesting, like, really creative, like, 9-year-old. But, like, again, it was about thinking about the textures of the voices and how you wanted, what you wanted, and on that particular thing, it's very cinematic. Again, the beginning of Iris, it's like it's supposed to invoke the Willies from if you're familiar with the ballet Giselle. It's like a forest of the lost souls of women who were jilted by men, and so they're suspended in that forest. And whenever a man comes through that forest, they seduce him into dancing until he dances himself to death, you know. And of course, the song is a breakup song, and that's, you know, but like, you know, and like there was this much thought that went into each and every song. And there's so many layers and so many nuances that I haven't really read anybody pick up on most of those nuances.
And even references, like there's a whole posse of collaborators that aren't with us, you know, like the sampling aesthetic and how sampling works and where you pull from in ancestry and all that kind of stuff. There's like a connection to spirituality and the spirit world vibe too. So there's so many different layers that like it helps me kind of understand it more and more and more. And it's a piece of work that we created in a very organic way, so it can speak to us rather than us telling it what it is and how it is and how it's going to be.
Yeah, it's interesting though, because it's the kind of record then that people can take from a year from now, 2 years from now, 10 years from now. You've created an audio storybook. Effectively, I know that's probably simple, but you've created something that people can take from years from now and find new things in. And I think again, you know, and they can take their own thoughts on it and they'll find new things. I think that's beautiful, guys. You know, it's quite exciting.
That's objective, but
yeah.
I'm not sure how many people understand that.
And also, it's also something that we're not necessarily bringing to life as an album in and of itself right now. It is a part of. It's actually really helping us build and express our entire Algiers world for the first time, really. Yeah. So everything is working together. So it's like it's almost like a history and presence of us. So we're pulling from it and bringing it into our world and pushing it back out. So it's really interesting in that way too.
It's kind of like Algiers world comes full circle.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways. So if you come to the shows, you'll see us in a new, perhaps an interesting way. All of our catalog will make sense to come into a focus in a way that hasn't before.
Yeah. Like an audio visual experience, man.
Or a cinematic band.
It's a cinematic whole vibe. I know that's obviously again simplistic terms, but it's very exciting to listen to you guys talk about it with the enthusiasm that you do, and I'm getting excited, you know, listening to you talk about it. So 5-6 more questions now, guys, and again I really appreciate your time sitting down with me. You mentioned obviously there are tracks on the record that did cause you know, challenges. Obviously I Can't Stand It was one you mentioned, you know, before. Obviously that's been, you know, out, you know, was out in the consciousness before, public consciousness before the album itself. For anybody that's a fan of your work, anybody that, you know, wants to emulate what you do, whether that's, you know, 2023 or, you know, 10 years from now, what are the realities of building a track like that? Take I Can't Stand It. What are the realities that you would want people to know? Because people might be like, they assume that it's possible for them or whatever, but what are the realities, the challenges that people might not know of getting a track like that done in terms of the creative process, the production, and you know, again, you mentioned it again, this record challenging you in new ways with a track like I Can't Stand It. Can you take me through the creative process of that and what that was like for you both?
I'll go first, and I'll keep it brief, but it was an extremely personal song for me.
Okay.
I made the beat in summer of 2020, and I got a bit of demoitis because, you know, the fellows were like, yeah, we should turn this into something. I was like, cool, but I didn't want to mess it up. And so I didn't really know what to do with it. And it was probably the last song that I tracked vocals on. I came out of a traumatic breakup, a traumatic long-term breakup, and I tried to commit suicide in December of 2020, which is what that song is about. I fucking read somewhere yesterday that they thought it was they called it a protest anthem. No, it's not about that at all. And I didn't know how to write to it or what to do with it to make it good. And it was also really like difficult for me to try to apply myself in order to do something constructive with that. But like Ryan mentioned earlier, the guys were very supportive and very insistent that we should try to finish the song and that it should be on the record. Everybody contributed to it in ways that I never would have foreseen, and it's just a very good example of how an Algiers song takes shape and takes form. Because at the very beginning, I couldn't figure out even how to approach the melody before any of the personal stuff came into it. We were just trying to workshop the song. And Ryan came up with that first melody line, da 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 da, you know, da 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 da. And I was like, okay, well, I didn't know how to the entry point, but I latched onto that as a way to rush in, you know. And then forever, I couldn't figure out what the chorus should be in a way that was sincere. And then Lee wound up workshopping. I don't even know what he did, but he came and he had like 2 or 3 different proposals of what the chorus could be. And we listened to him and was like, oh, well, that makes a lot of sense, you know? And so putting those 2 things together, I finally had a conduit to actually write to the song. And at that point, I certainly had something to write about. And then you bring in Sam and you bring in Jay Matthews. And the thing is, like, Sam is just amazing source in general, but Jay's, what she wrote, which was completely unprompted, and she had no idea what the song was about per se, you know, in those terms. She wrote just the most perfect dialogue for everything that, like, for me, everything that I put into that song and what it was about. And it destroyed me the first time I heard it, but just because it was almost like psychic. It was just so perfect. And it's just one of those examples for me where you can bring something to the table, but at the end of it, there's something so much bigger and more interesting than anything that you could envision or imagine. So that was my take on that.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, thanks very much, Franklin.
I mean, that's the thing. Like, there's so much humanity and about dealing with mental health. There's a lot in there about mental health. You hear it around when Frankie's cousin Gary's talking about pain. You don't know what pain is, and that's real shit. That's a real conversation. That's not scripted. I mean, and there's a lot within this record that is dealing with that. Even Irreversible Damage with Zach de la Rocha. The lyrics from Frankie and Zach are particularly my impression of Zach is they're some of the most personal ones I've ever seen from him. They're very much dealing with mental health. So that's something that I just wanted to reflect and you know, make sure and emphasize that that's there. The other thing I would say, you were talking about how people, you know, how to encourage other people to kind of, you know, do what we do if they're interested in that. It's patience, it's trust. Find people that you trust and find people that will help you through that, because you get knocked down so many times in the music industry. And even though we're putting out a record and feeling good, and we still get kicked every day, you know, and that's a hard thing. So just kind of acknowledging and recognizing that it is a struggle to make art in this world and to make something that feels meaningful to you, and then have people, you know, have their own perspectives on it. So I think those are some things that I would encourage. And then just like really get to know your practice, whatever that is. You know, Frank used the sampler on that, you know. Know where your voice sits, you know, all those types of things, and just kind of trust yourself as well, and you'll get there.
Yeah, that sort of trusting yourself, you know, moves on to my next question. There is 4 more left, guys. Again, thank you so much for the honest answers. I'm very curious to know, because you've been going, you know, there was obviously the 2015 self-titled debut. You've been doing this a long time now, and obviously there's all this lush production and this, you know, again, you know, Frankie's vocal and all this wonderful stuff, these beautiful elements to the sonics. But I'm particularly interested in how you as people have changed over that time. You know, 2015 Algiers, very different to 2023 Algiers, and you guys as individuals. How would you say you've changed and developed as people through the music you've created, through the touring, through the creative processes you've been through, from the very beginning of this band to where you are now? Start with Ryan and go to Frankie as well.
I mean, I've always pretended I was a patient person, but I've definitely learned patience. I think there's actually a lot of continuity and a lot of consistency within us, and I think maybe we've matured and grown and accepted each other's perspectives and what we bring to the table. I think that's much stronger and much more. There's a stronger bond in that sense, which is interesting because some people get to this stage, you know, 8 years into making records, it's the opposite. You know, those bonds are breaking, things are you sinking, feeling like that. So really, that's one of the things, is just learning how to build bonds better. is one of the main things. And then weirdly, like I was always impatient and always just expecting more and more and more. And you were talking about boundaries earlier. I'm always interested in pushing boundaries for myself and whatever music sounds like. I'm not really satisfied with like just a song, you know what I mean? It needs to do something for me. So that's one way I haven't changed. I've almost gotten more like impatient, like wanting to do new things and having myself challenged. So that's another way that I've that maybe that has changed in a way that I didn't expect.
Mm, mm. Yeah, you become a different person as well. Yeah, Frankie, your thoughts on that? How would you say you've changed and developed through this whole process?
Most pertinently here, I think I would say my writing process uh, has engaged the public much more in a way that I didn't anticipate it doing.
Okay.
Particularly just being a Black artist operating in a predominantly white space and a white-owned label. And, you know, the sorts of things that irk me about that experience and the way by which I will use those things in order to create a discourse with people through song. That's something I've done a lot more than I ever thought I would, which is cool because that means if you can do that, that means that somebody's listening. And if somebody's listening, it's almost better if they misunderstand what you're doing because it gives you more opportunities to engage with that. Yeah. And that's kind of the direction that my writing has taken within Algiers, anyway.
Yeah. No. Almost like a storyteller. You're telling stories through your own experience.
It's more like a dialogue in a way. You know, it's like songs Can the Subbase Speak, you know. That was there was a particularly egregious review of us through Pitchfork for that album. And a lot of that was because like we and specifically I had been trolling Pitchfork openly a number of reviews prior to that because I thought it was a racist, fucked up institution. And certainly not biased, or certainly not unbiased. And I think, you know, they wanted to, you know, take us down enough. So they wrote this review, which was, you know, very, very obviously inaccurate, and kind of taking that review and reading it back through the song. You know, it's like mechanisms like that that I found to be therapeutic.
Yeah.
You know, that's not something I ever thought I would do as a songwriter.
Yeah.
No.
You found that catharsis. You found that catharsis through the process.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like in the way, you know, Dylan wrote Positively 4th Street and as a sort of, you know, that was directed to the folk community in New York, stuff like that.
Yeah. Again, really appreciate the reflection on that stuff from you guys. I do want to end with sort of two questions around word association, because we do a lot of work Soundsphere with young people, and young people get a bit tied up in this idea of success. And the first word is success, the second is legacy. We'll get to that in a second. But I would like to ask you, because I know you can't speak for the other members of the band and you can't speak for each other. So individually, starting with, again, you know, I'm going to leave this to you guys to start with whoever wants to. But how do you define success as a person and as a musician? And are they one and the same things, or are they two different things?
How do you define success?
Yeah. The reason I asked the question is because, again, a lot of young people look at bands like yourselves, lots of streams, lots of, you know, again, touring the world, and they go, well, I'm never going to get, you know, I'm never going to get there. I'm never going to get to where Ryan is, to where Franklin is. I'm never going to have that opportunity. So, and they go, well, I'm not going to be successful like that. So I wanted to ask, you know, how do you guys define success? And Frankie, sorry I interrupted you there. I stopped you. I apologize.
I don't know. I think like with a lot of things, the definition is up to you, you know, but you have to be self-aware and tuned in enough with what it is that you want out of life in order to answer those questions.
Mm.
Like, I don't understand why it seems now more than ever people are more self-conscious and more concerned with what will be their legacies um, than they ever have been. I feel like, and this is just a product of like the world we're in at this point,
Mm.
digital culture and the internet and all of this. But it's just kind of like, I feel like everybody's already got their entire behind the music documentary in their head before they write the first song.
Yeah.
And they're documenting every minutia along the way just so it can be ready when the time comes when they're rich and famous to celebrate their careers. Like, and I think that's an absurd model to base your notion of success or anything else off of. How many people will remember me that I'll never meet when I'm dead? Who cares?
Mm.
Like for me, it's about living life on my own terms as closely as possible with as little fallout as possible in terms of, going into default with my credit or having a place to live. That's how I live.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
For young people, I would say that there's so many pressures, like social media pressures, like fame pressure. Like we live in such a hyper celebrity culture that oftentimes we feel like unless we're famous, unless we have these material reflections or this number of followers on TikTok or this many engagements, that our art is not valid. And
Mm.
then on the other side, there's the whole pressure from society that you need to be even still an upstanding citizen and contribute in some way and make money and have a job and all that shit. So whereas music is a hobby rather than a part of your life. So there's those two things that push you on both sides that are both part of a larger societal
Mm.
superstructure, a part of
Mm.
our economy and all the things like that. And so number one, it's like just find support systems because you need it. You need people to support you on both sides. And for me, it's meaningful to incorporate art into your life. And
Yeah.
if you can make art a part of your life, it doesn't have to be your career, but if you can accept that art is a part of your life, then maybe something will happen with just the natural organic growth of things.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have to achieve something by the time you're 18 years old. You don't have to do this, and this, and this, and this. It's a lifelong process.
Yeah.
And with us, we were doing other jobs and things before Algiers started. We were just kind of getting started in our careers and things like that as adults. And then it happened because we had incorporated music in our lives.
Mm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Our lives. So that's really one of those things. It's like no matter what you do, it's meaningful.
Yeah.
Except that it is more meaningful than whatever the celebrity culture tells you it is, and then whatever the job culture tells you it is.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It is about creating that meaning through whatever you do, and whatever you do, if it has a creative drive, it does have some meaning. It might not reach millions of people, but it's in the doing. I guess that's what I've heard you say there. Yeah,
I mean, being an artist has nothing to do with what you do for a living.
Yeah.
You're either an
Yeah.
artist or not. And up until very recently, in the span of like Western civilization, artists were not rich and famous and credible in their lifetime.
They're still
yeah, 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 yeah.
Exactly.
It's again a wider conversation. Last one then before we do the plugging bit. Again, really appreciate you making the time for me. Obviously, Legacy came into that briefly, but as a band, you mentioned obviously again, obviously personal definitions a little bit, but do you pay attention or even think about the legacy of where Algiers will be and what it will mean to people? Not to be too morbid, but beyond your existence, do you think much about the legacy of you guys as a band and the musical output you've done?
I don't. The only thing that I can really say to that, and Frank can finish off, is just that I always just had a desire for a sense of belonging, and by doing music with Frankie, with Lee, with people outside of the band, it makes me feel like I belong to something bigger than myself, and it also makes me feel connected to musical communities that have maybe passed or are gone. So it's like I said before, there's like a whole different psychological or spiritual space where all that can exist and we can feel a belonging.
Mm.
Feel a
Mm.
belonging not only with the people who've come before us, but also with our younger selves, with our older selves, and trying to just find that space. So in a sense, for me, it's just a personal experience of all that and being a part of something.
Yeah, I liked when you said earlier it's a posse. You've become a posse. Oh, it's more than just a band; it's a posse now, and I really like that. So Frankie, your thoughts on the legacy and I guess your legacy as an artist?
Um, I don't think in those terms.
Okay.
Like thinking in the future and then retrospectively, like can't control any of that anyway. You know.
Mm.
I'm more. I'm quite persistently preoccupied with what can I do next,
Mm.
and um, not wanting to stick around in one, sort of musical modality for too long, and not wanting that to define the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, because it's a living, breathing organism, spirit, the muse. Trying to find that and capture that and let it speak through you, for me, is the point.
Yeah.
So legacy, whatever, that's a byproduct that's generally fabricated and projected upon you by people who had nothing to do with what happened in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's more about the living, breathing Algiers, the life force of Algiers, rather than creating the life force, sustaining the life force through music, rather than what other people think externally of the band.
Yeah. But it's also nice, if you find like-minded people and then you can build and do interesting things with them too. That's always cool.
Yeah. Which is what, yeah.
Have fun at shows and perform and do all the things that are kind of the other side of it. That's fun.
Yeah. It's what you've done on Shook. It's it's a beautiful record, and congratulations on everything you've done with that. It's something I like I say I'm enjoying listening to before this, and I will continue to listen to after we've done this. So thank you so much for making the time. I know you're on tour and busy and stuff, guys. Before we finish up, this is where we check if I've done my job appropriately. Is there anything that I've missed that you would like to plug before we finish up today?
I mean, all I would say is listen to Shook. Thank you for spending time with it because it does demand attention. And we have a companion album called Shook World that was done by King Vision Ultra, where he took a lot of the stems and flipped them into an entirely new rap record. So I would encourage everyone to check Shook and Shook World out.
Awesome. Anything else to add? Anything, Frank?
Listen to the record with headphones, good headphones.
Cool. I appreciate your time, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.